And as Gaza plunges deeper into humanitarian catastrophe, the world is being forced to confront uncomfortable questions. European nations are shifting towards recognizing Palestinian statehood, even as famine grips Gaza and ceasefire talks teeter between hope and collapse. Tonight's special coverage unpacks two urgent fronts: Europe's diplomatic awakening and the unraveling of humanitarian aid in Gaza. Can global recognition change the course of the war? And will the ceasefire framework survive amid mass hunger and bloodshed?
والله العظيم ولا حبة رز، والله العظيم ولا حبة عدس. ما فيش أكل، ما فيش شرب، عندي بنت 2.5 صارت تطلع.
France has taken a decisive step by pledging to recognize the state of Palestine at the UN General Assembly in September. The announcement marks a historic shift in European policy and comes as several other countries, Portugal, Spain, Ireland and Malta, signal similar moves. Egypt has welcomed France's pledge, describing it as a reaffirmation of the global consensus for a two-state solution. Meanwhile, Israeli opposition remains fierce, calling the move premature and dangerous. With diplomatic momentum building across the continent, the central question becomes: will recognition translate into accountability and pressure on Israel? And joining us now from Jericho is Dr. Abdel Nasser Mekki, the Professor of Political Science and a specialist in international law and Middle Eastern diplomacy. Welcome, Doctor. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Let me ask and start off, please. How does the IPC's formal famine threshold declaration, do you think, change the legal and moral obligations of the international community, in your opinion, sir?
Again?
Do you want me to repeat the question? Yes. How does the IPC's formal famine threshold, the declaration, change the legal and moral obligations of the international community?
Yes, I think this will be good for the positive things. And I think what the government of France about the recognition of Palestine is in the right direction. So this will also send good signal and marks to the other countries, especially in the European Union, to go ahead with what France is doing now for this recognition. And also many of the countries will go ahead with this. So I think this will be a good impact on the situation on the Middle East.
Mm-hmm. Doctor, as the WFP says now that Gaza now mirrors Ethiopia's 1980s famine, what comparable policy failures are we seeing today?
I think for this matter, maybe I don't understand what you mean. Could you just repeat again the question?
You'd like me to repeat the question? Okay.
Yes,
The WFP says Gaza now mirrors Ethiopia's 1980s famine. We have a comparison here. So what comparable policy failures are we seeing today that it's repeating itself again? We're seeing the similar famine that we had seen in Ethiopia in the 1980s.
You mean the starvation in Ethiopia?
Sorry?
You mean the starvation like what happened in
Yes,
in
we're
Ethiopia?
comparing now. Yes, we're comparing situations.
Yes, comparative. Yes, which was happening in Gaza.
Yes.
Yes, I think there is similar for the two cases, but for Ethiopian was not that internal elements or internal elements, but in Palestine or in Gaza, it's like occupation. It's like, that there is like aggression against the Palestinian people. There are siege, there are closing the borders,
Yes.
there are preventing the people from, that taking or reaching to the main sources for the food and the water. There is some cases which will be similar, but here it's much more seriously affected for the people because all the international community for the Ethiopian, they participated in order to minimize the case in Ethiopia, but in Palestine, they couldn't do anything because all things have been closed. Just they are talking, declaration, something condemned, talking to Israel to open the borders, but they are not doing anything like what they did for the Ethiopian.
Okay. Okay, sir, with 46 people being shot or bombed by just simply looking for food, is Israel using starvation as a weapon of war, do you think, in your opinion?
Yes, I think this is not by the Israeli also. This is a plan between the Israeli and America. What they are establishing is just a Gaza humanitarian, that for a center for the food is just like ambush for the people to come and they kill the people. And this is something in order to reach that the people will not get the food and they want to change their life, the people of Gaza, their life to be miserable and to pressure on them in order to leave Gaza. This is not the way that you could just send, that food to the people by tell them to come and walk for 10 kilometers for some centers with hundreds of thousands of people, and after that, shoot them. This is something criminal. This is the war criminal. They want to, to give them the food, they just open the borders. This is only the only way. And I think many of the countries now, especially today, they just apply for the United States of America and Israel to pressure to open the borders. Otherwise, 500,000 of the people in Gaza, they're exposed to die by the starvation. And this is facts. It's not just propaganda, as the Israelis say. The Israelis say that it's something, especially Smotrich and Gafir, they say this is something, there is no starvation, and the people they could get assistance. But I think this is not the truth. The truth is that the people is suffering from the starvation, and you see on the TV, many hundreds of people now, they are dying by the female by the starvation, by the lack of the food, especially for the children. Now about 100,000 children in Gaza exposed to die in 1 week.
Okay, sir, the UN warns of, and according to their expression, an exponential rise in hunger deaths, which is a huge rise in hunger deaths. What, in your opinion, do you think are the mechanisms that exist so that we can avoid that projection that they're calling exponential to actually happen? What can we do to avoid from that huge rise of hunger and deaths? How can we prevent that?
Yes, okay. In order to avoid the hunger and the death of the thousands of people, I think the Americans should pressure. Now, Steve Woodcock in their visit today, one of the center in Rafah, and he saw by his eyes what the people is suffering. So I think he should be truth in that transfer what he saw in Rafah in this center to the American, to Trump administration, in order that they should minimize the problem and the miserable situation for the people in Gaza. Otherwise, we will see the most and the significant miserable situation and the death of thousands, hundreds of people by the starvation, while the Israelis said that there is no starvation because they want to justify what they are doing. They are killing, they are preventing. So the only way is to avoid what about the starvation and the killing of the people by this starvation is to find a mechanism which is to open the border and to
And
let
to allow aid,
hundreds
yeah.
of trucks.
Well, that brings me to my next question. Aid trucks average just 100 a day versus what they actually need would be around 600 to 700 needed every day. Can you explain to us, please, why is there the gap, do you think?
I think the Israeli, that even 100 trucks, when they are open, when they are enter Gaza, they are exposed to people who are, coordinate with Israeli, which they are the robbers and also some of the spies and the people who are making, relation with Israeli, but from the Gazan people who are, make relation with Israeli, they steal all the trucks and they and also at the same time they sell it to the people with a high price. This is one thing. The other thing is that the people in Gaza is not just want, corn and wheat for the bread. They are needing the all food which is necessary and necessary for their children, milk and the other, that food which is necessary for the children and the young people, which is not until now they are not entered to Gaza. And for 100, even that, if we are talking about, suppose that we are talking about 100 enter Gaza, it's just a small. It's small trucks.
Okay. Do you think the recent, we call them tactical pauses that are announced by Israel, do they actually mean to improve the humanitarian access, or do you think they are just primarily like just PR maneuvers from Israel?
Yes, for the Israeli, I think it's PR. I don't think that Israeli wants people to stay in Gaza. I think the Israeli is just focusing on the cleansing and also on the genocide. They don't want the people to stay in Gaza.
And how do you think, sir, is the widespread malnutrition now reshaping Gaza's social fabric and the prospects for the post-war recovery?
Again, because there are some voices.
How is the malnutrition now and all this hunger that's happening now in Gaza, how do you think, in your opinion, is it reshaping Gaza's social fabric and the prospects for the post-war and recovering from the war later on?
You mean the regression?
I'm sorry?
You mean the regression of the state?
No. I'm speaking about just another question about the segmentation of the society. How is the widespread malnutrition now reshaping the prospects of the post-war recovery of the Gazan society?
I think that for the post-recovery for Gaza, they need, that much assistance in order to change, and in order to change for the better life. This is, I think, what they need.
Okay. Do you think an independent humanitarian air bridge outside the Israeli control be established under the UN Security Council authority?
I think yes. I think
you think that's
this
possible?
Is the only way. The only way that which will be help is to have independent, institution by under the United Nations.
Well, thank you, Dr. Abdel Nasser Makki, so much for your valuable insights and into this pivotal moment in the global diplomatic landscape. Thank you so much. As the international community debates borders and recognition, the people of Gaza now face an even more immediate crisis: survival. In the second half of the special coverage, we turn to the deepening famine, failed aid corridors, and the fragile framework of the ceasefire talks. And reporting by Al Ahram Online paints a harrowing picture. Gaza is facing famine-level food insecurity with malnutrition rampant, especially in the north. And dozens of civilians have been killed or injured while gathering near food distribution points, allegedly due to the Israeli fire. Meanwhile, the humanitarian aid flows have collapsed, with the UN and relief agencies calling the situation unprecedented in scale and devastation. And at the same time, Egypt and Qatar are stepping up their mediation efforts, working alongside the U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in a last-ditch attempt to salvage the ceasefire talks. But on the ground, desperation grows by the hour. And to help us unpack this crisis, we are joined today by Mr. Hani El-Gamal, a Cairo-based researcher specializing in regional and international affairs. Thank you, sir, for joining me today here at Special Coverage. Mr. Hani, what strategic calculus do you think drove France, long cautious on this file, to set a UNGA date for recognition, as they're claiming it's supposed to be happening in September 2025 in the General Assembly?
Greetings to you, Ms. Salma, and to your audience. I think what Israel came from carnages against Palestinians is the thing that rushed the international compass to back Palestinian cause. The lies about Palestinians after the 7th of October, there was a military machine against innocent people and Palestinians. France was always writing in their press agencies after the narratives of the giving information that rushed the press agencies to recognize France. What Israel did from preventing UNRWA and preventing aid access, witnessed by Macron, President Macron, during his visit here in El Arish, a visit here in Egypt, and he saw many civilian French organizations involved in the aid, and also visited some hospitals in Al Arish, put the stones to step up the discussions. This vision and this witness was also the same that happened with Guterres and his prevent from entering Gaza, and Israel threatened these figures. They don't feel unsecure to send them with the aid in Gaza.
Mr. Hani, Canada and Malta have now joined, and Portugal is consulting parties, and the UK signals it may follow. Do you think we're witnessing a tipping point inside the G7 EU bloc?
I think the presence of more European countries and Australia in this path confirms that this is a pressure card on the US administration, first of all, to have a relief for the systematic famine against the Palestinians until it reached the 5th and the 6th phase of famine severity. Second, Israel has to respect legislatives, especially Oslo Agreement that reiterated the establishment of Palestinians on the borders of 1976 with the East Jerusalem as its capital for Palestinians. This this shift coordinates with the British stance that confirms its very closeness to to join this path in regards to, in addition to the threats by the German foreign minister calling upon Israel, unless there is a threat enhancement, there will be joining in recognizing Palestine.
And Sir, do you think Israel labels now the recognitions as being premature? Do you think that Tel Aviv's backlash can even have more capitals maybe to act more in solidarity? Do you think this could actually happen?
Maybe Tel Aviv has two important paths. First of all, unless it has to coordinate with the international community to allow humanitarian aid access, or explosion, because Israel, until in regards to Hamas latest response, it wasn't convinced unless there is and said unless there is positive response from Hamas, they will expand their military operations again, and they have to maintain the explosion. They may occur inside Palestinians in front of in fronting Palestinians. Meaning that inside Israel is actually flaming, whether from the different parties or from the hostages' families. They started to protest, to pressure on the government to accept any truce and stop the killings, even in the protests in some left extremist parties, universities were against these operations. But we have they may recall on Netanyahu if there are some deviance against him.
Okay, Mr. Hani, how, in your opinion, if you can share with us and tell us, how is Washington reacting, do you think? Especially as the humanitarian images are dominating the U.S. media at the moment?
I think what the U.S. did from sending Witkoff to stand what is happening in the aid, it's just a show, because the U.S. knows from satellite and their own eyes inside Gaza Strip or even inside Israel, there is a systematic famine made by Israel, in addition to the suspected GHF led to the killing of more than 1,000 martyrs, in addition to forcibly displaced Palestinians, and through some aid points targeting aid seekers. And I think Israel investigated widely and accusing the use of violence against aid seekers in order not to have in order to pressure Hamas to approve Witkoff agreement, and through which they can flow the aid. This is what Hamas sees currently is not the best. Hamas until now pens its stance unless there is a great flow of humanitarian aid and there is a safeguard that Israel will not weaponize the starvation during the upcoming negotiations.
Mr. Hani, can you think, in your opinion, recognition alone unlock the aid corridors, or must it be maybe paired with robust protection forces on the ground?
There is more than one solution. First of all, they have to open the 6 corridors surrounding Israel in order to allow the flow of humanitarian aid access to Palestinians, and also to have humanitarian corridors overseen by the UN and the World Nutrition Program and UNRWA, which is the most involving and experienced in this in this field in order to ensure the humanitarian aid to those who deserve, not to Hamas, and this is something important. And also to have the autonomy consisting of Palestinians, and have to have a transit and in turn transmission in Palestine, in Gaza Strip, and which will allow the relief of some of the burdens Palestinians are feeling. Also allowing some countries, whether Europe or US or any peacemaker country, try to engage them to lift the burden and to limit the military operations, Israeli military operations. But now, until now, Israeli's armies are focused in some parts of Gaza, about 60%, in addition to extending settlements and also in addition to isolation sites, which will be an obstacle. Israel may allow the establishment of Palestinian, but not on the borders of 1967. And also then the current situation Israel is doing by pressuring more, or pressuring on negotiations, or Palestinians, I think will explode
Mr. Hani,
the situation.
Let me ask you now and move on to domestically. Do you think these recognitions shift the European public opinion enough maybe to influence the arms export licenses to Israel?
I think it's a very important point, because I think in these days they have to renew the trade agreement between the European Union and Israel, and defend based on the second article. If the European Union felt that Israel violating human rights, it has the right to pend this agreement. The other part is that there is some countries like Slovakia pended weapons agreements and providing Israel with the weapons. And another part is that there are some European countries rejected any imports or from Israeli settlements, which is one of the economic besiege. In addition to election blockade, which confirmed that they are reviewing their policies against Israel, and they may put their articles unnegotiable with them. It means that there is a kind of international isolation made on Israel, or the US and the US interests from another part. This is why we say the economic file is the magical solution to to some of the issues. This is why if the economic file pressure was, if it was experienced against Israel for a longer time, then we wouldn't have reached that level, or to have a real horizon for two-state solution, especially that there is a public international increase in recognizing Palestine to turn it to a real member in the UN. And I think this will be a crisis to the US system that vetoed any decision condemning Israel. I think these practices may put Israel and US in a kind of political isolation, confirming, affecting their existence. And I think the US would wanted to pass some some decisions in this regard.
Okay. Sir, do you think maybe might recognition moves, do you think, maybe give the International Criminal Court additional impetus, or maybe cover to accelerate more the war crimes probes, do you think?
I think what Israel did from what the court did by issuing 2 resolutions to stop Netanyahu, I think building on it will be very important to document many crimes against humanity and against Netanyahu, whether military and even against his personnel or settlers who held weapons against innocent Palestinians. There is documents in this regard, not only through witnesses, but also through videos and pictures, and in addition to annexing and expanding settlements, even though the Knesset who gave the green light to Israel to annex settlements, this confirms their systematic plan to eliminate Palestinian state. This is why this is what was condemned in the court, the World Criminal Court, condemning Netanyahu and Israel of violating human rights.
And that was Mr. Hani El Gamal. Thank you so much, sir, for shedding light on the human toll of this catastrophe and the fragile path forward. Tonight's special coverage has laid bare two urgent truths. The world is inching towards recognizing Palestine as a state, and yet that same world stands paralyzed as Gaza starves. Recognition must not be symbolic, it must be a catalyst for protection, accountability, and action. And if this is a turning point, it must turn towards justice. Thank you very much.